Right then, let's talk about Donald Trump. Again, look, I know. It's like a bad rash, you just want to stop scratching, but the itch is just too damn persistent. And this time the itch comes in the form of an executive order, freezing federal funding like a polar vortex over Washington. This wasn't your typical, let's trim a bit of fat from the budget kind of freeze. Oh no, this was more like plunging the entire federal government into a cryogenic chamber, hoping anything resembling Trump's agenda might thaw out on the other side. The executive order itself was vague, leaving lawmakers, government agencies, and even those poor souls who actually understand the federal budget scratching their heads. What exactly was being frozen? No one seemed to know. It was a classic Trump move act first, think later, or maybe never. The immediate aftermath of the executive order was, to put it mildly, chaotic. Imagine a pack of squirrels hopped up on energy drinks let loose in the Library of Congress, and you'd be close to the level of confusion that ensued. Lawmakers were left scrambling, unsure of which programs would be affected. State and local governments, heavily reliant on federal funding, were thrown into disarray, unsure if essential services would be impacted. The White House, in their infinite wisdom, decided the best course of action was to send out Caroline Leavitt, the latest sacrificial lamb, press secretary, to clear things up. It went about as well as you'd expect. Leavitt, bless her heart, tried her best to explain the unexplainable but ended up creating more confusion than she cleared up. At one point she even suggested that Medicaid, the healthcare program for low-income Americans, might be affected before hastily backtracking. It was a masterclass in how not to communicate during a crisis. Now, thankfully, the American legal system, despite its many flaws, still has a pulse. And that pulse was strong enough to deliver a swift kick to the shins of Trump's executive overreach. A federal judge, clearly not amused by the chaos unfolding, slapped a temporary injunction on the funding freeze, halting it in its tracks. The judge's reasoning was simple. The government couldn't even define what the hell the freeze actually covered. It was like trying to enforce a restraining order against bad vibes. Conceptually appealing perhaps, but legally unenforceable. This, of course, is just the first volley in what is sure to be a protracted legal battle. Trump, never one to back down from a fight, especially when his ego is involved, has vowed to appeal the injunction. So buckle up, folks, because this roller coaster ride of legal wrangling is just getting started. So, what exactly was the rationale behind this ill-conceived funding freeze? Well, according to the White House, it was all about draining the swamp. That ever-elusive swamp that seems to have expanded exponentially under Trump's watch. Apparently, there are all sorts of nefarious programs lurking within the federal budget, just waiting to undermine Trump's agenda. Things like, and I'm quoting here, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Because God forbid we try to make the American government even slightly reflective of the people it's supposed to represent. But let's be honest, folks, this wasn't about draining the swamp. This was about consolidating power. This was about Trump, once again, testing the limits of his authority, seeing just how far he could push the boundaries of the presidency before someone, anyone, stopped him. Now you might be thinking, John, surely this latest stunt will finally be the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? And look, I understand that sentiment, I really do. But we've been down this road before, haven't we? Trump's core supporters, those who believe he can do no wrong, will likely shrug this off as just another example of their man fighting back against the deep state. They'll cheer him on, convinced that he's the only one who can save America from, well, something. But for everyone else, for those who haven't completely succumbed to Trump-induced apathy, this latest episode is deeply concerning. It's a stark reminder that we have a president who seems intent on dismantling the norms and institutions that have governed this country for centuries. The White House predictably has circled the wagons, defending Trump's actions with the tenacity of a rabid badger defending its den. Their argument, if you can call it that, boils down to this. Trump won the election, therefore he can do whatever the hell he wants. They point to Article 2 of the Constitution, that vague and terrifyingly open-ended document that outlines the powers of the presidency as justification for Trump's actions. They claim that unelected bureaucrats are out to sabotage Trump's agenda, ignoring the fact that many of these bureaucrats are simply trying to do their jobs and uphold the law. It's a familiar refrain from this administration. Attack the critics, deflect blame, in hope that no one notices the ever-growing pile of scandals and controversies piling up at their feet. Unsurprisingly, legal experts and constitutional scholars have been less than impressed by Trump's latest power grab. They've described the funding freeze as reckless, unconstitutional, and a clear violation of the separation of powers. Corey Brettschneider, a constitutional law professor at Brown University, put it best when he said, "Trump's actions represent a fundamental disregard for the rule of law and the principles of democracy, but the concerns go beyond the legal ramifications." Experts warn that the chaos and uncertainty caused by the funding freeze could have long-lasting consequences for vital government programs and services. They point to the potential disruption to scientific research, environmental protection, and public health initiatives as just a few examples. What's perhaps most alarming about Trump's funding freeze is that it's not an isolated incident. It's part of a larger pattern of behavior, a creeping authoritarianism that has been steadily eroding the foundations of American democracy. We've seen it in his attacks on the media, his attempts to undermine the judiciary, and his relentless assaults on anyone who dares to question his authority. Each transgression, seemingly more brazen than the last, chips away at the norms and values that have long defined this country. And let's be clear, this is not normal. This is not how a president, even one as demonstrably unqualified and unfit for office as Donald Trump, is supposed to behave. As the legal battles rage on and the political fallout continues to unfold, one thing is certain. Trump's funding freeze has left a deep scar on the American psyche. It has exposed the fragility of our democratic institutions and deepened the already chasm-like divisions within our society. It's a stark reminder that the fight for the soul of America is far from over. It's a fight that will require constant vigilance, unwavering commitment to democratic principles, and a refusal to accept the normalization of Trump's brand of chaos and division. So, stay informed, stay engaged, and for the love of all that is good and decent in this world, never, ever stop holding those in power accountable. Because the alternative, as we're witnessing firsthand, is far too terrifying to contemplate.